Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So it must be a day that ends in Y because we have another round of bad news for Ubisoft. We all know 2024 has been a nightmarish year for this company. They've had many AAA flops, and their prize of this year, Assassin's Creed Shadows, has been delayed to February of next year. And in this video, we're going to cover multiple topics involving Ubisoft, beginning with some very weird news, a new strategy reported by an insider at Ubisoft, where they claim the company is going to engage in some pretty deceptive practices aimed at misleading gamers about the success of some of the games released at Ubisoft. And on top of that, we're going to look at some news involving Assassin's Creed Shadows and the 12 or so gamers left who might be still interested in this company, and some bad news they might be facing about that release. Now let's look at the main headline, speaking generally about Ubisoft here. So from that Park Place, Ubisoft reportedly pressures Steam to get rid of concurrent player count after Star Wars Outlaws' disastrous debut. Now that is a very deceptive practice, and one that really is only used as a shield to hide the failures of these gaming companies. Now before we get into the details of this story, I have some very big news for you guys right here. We got a Black Friday merch drop with UwuMarket, 2 new items in my collection, and conveniently it is a buy one get one 50% off Black Friday sale using the code Black Friday at checkout. Now let's see the new items to my collection here. Like I said, just in time for this buy one get one 50% off sale, we have 2 new items here in my merch collection, beginning with something very unique, a new Hiyori, which for those who don't know, this is an oversized item here. It's supposed to be comfortable and something you can slip on top of your clothing. This is very popular at conventions. If you didn't know, this year I attended both in person and virtually several conventions, and I plan on doing the same next year. And a lot of people use this to support particularly their favorite VTubers, and as you can see, it's very high quality design and some beautiful banger art with the signature on the back. On top of that, another first ever, a quote unquote Booba mousepad. I mean, obviously you can take a look at this character. There's not much to work with here, so my wife, Darling Straub, with the help of her VTuber model, has these 2 plushies here to help give support to your wrist if you use this mousepad. And if you really like the mousepad, you can also get the oversized version right here that's even bigger. So that is something that you can look at, as well as the rest of my collection with UwuMarket, which is quite extensive at this point, even though we've only worked with the company for about a year, but we have a very long line of items. Again, make sure to use the code Black Friday at checkout to get take advantage of this buy one get one 50% off sale at UwuMarket. All the relevant links will be in the pinned comment. So let's return to the news for today. Here's the headline once again. Ubisoft reportedly pressures Steam to get rid of concurrent player count after Star Wars Outlaws' disastrous debut. Now, this is something that is, well, pretty expected from Ubisoft. This is a tactic that will be deceptive. It will mislead people about the current status of games because, let's face it, Steam numbers matter. It's a very important metric. It doesn't mean a game is good or bad in every single case. There's definitely some hidden gems out there or games that are overhyped. The numbers aren't always accurate, but they're pretty good, and definitely an indication about how it's being received. I mean, we've seen this with Veilguard. It's a very good metric to compare Veilguard to a similarly hyped up AAA release like Black Myth Wukong, and seeing the disparity there is something that is very important for a lot of people when considering whether or not to purchase that game. And as you can see here, the story was first broken by Phantom Pulse, citing an inside source close to Ubisoft that alleged that the company sees such a public display of its failures as embarrassing in front of both players and investors. Ubisoft and other companies want to pressure Steam to stop the tracker from giving out info they want to keep to themselves, the source told Phantom Pulse. They want to be able to present findings to investors so they can make it sound good. In other words, Steam's transparency makes it difficult for Ubisoft to lie. I always thought this would happen eventually, where these big companies would try to go after Steam and some of the metric systems. And the fact that it's Ubisoft, not surprising at all. Now, what's going on with Star Wars Outlaws? Well, in case you didn't know, they had a recent re-release of this game on Steam. This was the first time this was available in this option. And the initial release of this game on your traditional consoles was 2 months ago, and as you can see, it's not going well on Steam. In fact, the overall release of this game hasn't even broken 2 million sales yet, which is a major disappointment for Ubisoft. And on top of that, you can see the Steam release. We actually reported on this the first day when the player count was around 1,500 after the first 24 hours. And I predicted it might crack 2K, which is pretty accurate because the all-time peak was 5 days ago at about 2,500 concurrent players. And again, that is a major disappointment. Not only is that a disappointment for this title generally, but also given the fact it released on Steam only 2 months after the release on the other consoles. And that is a big disappointment. There's no way they thought it would be this low when they were preparing for this game's release, especially on Steam. And this is an indication that a lot of people are not very invested in this game. And yeah, that's a bad look for Ubisoft, and I would get why they'd be so panicked by this. But in my humbled opinion here, I don't think there's going to be anything happening to these Steam charts. I think they're going to be around. The transparency is a great thing. And unfortunately for Ubisoft, it just exposes what's really going on. And not only are gamers pretty interested in these numbers, also investors who are very upset with Ubisoft over the past, not just this year, but last year as well, which have been very disappointing financial results for 2 years running with Ubisoft. But let's move on to Assassin's Creed Shadows. This was a game that was set to release this year in November, but was delayed until February. They have been facing a mountain of controversy, and this is a good point made by Asmongold, responding to one of the articles we're going to quickly look at in a second, where he says people love to complain about Yasuke, but by the time this shit comes out, he's not even going to be in the top 10 problems this game has. And I think that's a very fair point. I think Yasuke was the starting point for a lot of the controversy, especially given all the historical inaccuracies and the just ridiculous stuff surrounding that. But there is a lot more going on fundamentally with this game and how Ubisoft is implementing it that I think are very, very concerning. I mean, there's been no hype surrounding the gameplay itself, and now there's also these extra factors that are being added in when it comes to how you're going to play this game. So let's look at this right here from Insider Gaming. Half of Assassin's Creed Shadows devs have never built a game before. Yikes, dude. It doesn't really surprise anyone, but this headline is pretty worrisome. Okay, so think about this. Imagine going to a restaurant and ordering not just any expensive dish. You're getting that $130 Ultimate Edition meal. And the chef comes by, or the waiter comes by and says, just to let you know, half of the staff here has never cooked a meal before. Enjoy. Yeah, that'd be pretty alarming, and that's the same case here with Assassin's Creed Shadows. If you read this article here, it says, in an appearance at the External Development Summit 2024, Assassin's Creed executive producer Mark Alexis Cote said, one of the things that I've noticed since the pandemic is that we have a lot of juniors in our teams. Probably half of the team that's building Assassin's Creed is building a game for the first time. I've made this joke way too many times, but I'm going to say it again. They really need to hire their own secret service that just jumps onto microphones anytime these people are about to do an interview. The higher-ups at Assassin's Creed Shadows as well as Ubisoft keep damaging the reputation and the excitement surrounding their games every time they speak publicly. It's just a disaster, whether they're contradicting one another or they're saying things that just are off-putting about their products. It keeps happening over and over again. If you don't believe the article, here's the actual interview from about a month ago. Let's listen to what he had to say.
One of the things that I've noticed since the pandemic is that we have a lot of juniors in our teams, and I don't know if this is something that's your case as well, but the seniority has lowered globally, and probably half the team that's building an Assassin's Creed is building a game for the first time.
That's terrifying. Thanks for letting us know that basically your team is full of inexperienced people. That is not a very good sign for anyone interested in this game. Now, we're going to end this video with one more article here. The headline is Assassin's Creed Shadows to feature de novo as well as mandatory Ubisoft account linking. Now, that is something that is very worrisome to a lot of people. It's not exactly surprising that these two things are happening given the history of Ubisoft as well as Assassin's Creed titles, but it's still not a very welcomed one. So if you go down here, if you're any way familiar with PC gaming industry or have read the title of this article, then you're most likely already aware and guessed one of the caveats, and yes, the PC version of Assassin's Creed Shadows will feature de novo, a controversial DRM software detested by the community for negatively affecting loading times and frame rate in games, something their creator, Urdetto, categorically denies. blaming its low reputation on pirates and gamers. Of course, it's now just more than the gamers who are destroying all these things, it's pirates as well. While Denuvo's presence in Shadows is not much of a surprise considering it's been used in Ubisoft's previous games like Assassin's Creed Mirage, Star Wars Outlaws, the Far Cry series, and others, the decision to keep DRM could be seen as questionable given the growing trend of developers ditching it or choosing not to include it in the first place. And of course, Ubisoft has a very negative reputation right now, and why would they have to add these extra things in to piss people off even further? The second caveat relates to another requirement the community generally dislikes, the mandatory account linking to the studio's Ubisoft Connect platform when buying Assassin's Creed Shadows on Steam. Now, we saw this happen earlier this year with Helldivers 2, and that was an absolute PR nightmare, and it appears that Ubisoft hasn't learned anything from that situation, which was a disaster. People responded extremely negatively to that situation, but let's finish off here. To top it all off, Shadows EULA also includes a provision that allows the game to monitor your PC's RAM to ensure you're not running any unauthorized programs like macros, cheats, or hacks, a well-intentioned clause that nonetheless feels a touch out of place in a single-player game and could potentially scare off some of the more suspicious players who aren't comfortable with their hardware being monitored. It's basically a two-factor system here forcing you to comply with these things, and that turns off a lot of gamers. That's not something that they are welcoming to, and just another bad look for Ubisoft. And again, with everything going on, Assassin's Creed coming out in February is going to be an extremely interesting release. A lot of people are predicting a massive failure. That makes sense. And also, it's really just how low is it going to go at this point? And every single time there's a news cycle involving this game, it's negative. Not even the shills who love Ubisoft and praise them constantly can come up with anything. They can't even cope anymore. They have nothing positive, no positive angles to go with involving this game or Ubisoft. But at this point, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comments section down below. And I'll see you guys next time.